Welcome to Firsts in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write fantastic fiction. I'm your host, Aaron Gansky, author of The Bargain, The Hand of Adonai series, and Firsts in Fiction.
And I'm Alton Gansky, the author of numerous novels and nonfiction works.
I'm Molly Jo Reilly. I am producer of the podcast, author of The Unemployment Cookbook, and the upcoming mystery location novel, NOLA.
And thank you all for joining us live in the chat room tonight. And right now I think our numbers are all the way up to 0. We had a little bit of a snafu with technical issues. We're still trying to get stuff worked out, so please bear with us. I know our audio quality last week was definitely subpar, and so we are taking steps to ensure that that does not happen again. We want to deliver the best quality podcast that we can for you guys, and we do that every Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on YouTube. If you're unable to watch at that time, you can watch us at aarongansky.com later or just on YouTube whenever the mood strikes you, whenever you have some free time. So you can also download the audio only from aarongansky.com. And if you are watching on YouTube, if you do us a favor, just click that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe to us. We've had a couple more subscribers this week, so that's always encouraging. Getting ever closer to that 100 subscriber landmark, so we're pretty excited about that. So if you are joining us, thank you very much. If you're joining us later, thank you very much. On to our Ask the Author question, since we're starting a little bit later tonight. Patty Lincecum Minch, I believe is how you say it, double I there. She says, good question, Jacqueline, and she's referring to Jacqueline Patterson, who last week asked about what advice writers should listen to from beta readers. So what advice do beta readers give you that you should actually listen for? And so Patty says, that's a good question. And then she says, now for the other side of the equation, because I've been a beta reader several times, and at least one experience was difficult, to say the least. Here's my question. How can we best prepare and educate our beta readers? For example, what information should we provide, and at what point should we share with them our manuscript, etc.? And so my answer is simply this. First of all, I'm impressed with the question. We've got a lot of really great questions, very insightful. And so I want to begin by answering the last question first, which was, when should you show your beta readers your manuscript? And so just as a quick reminder, by definition, a beta reader is one who reads your completed manuscript. They don't see it beforehand. If they are reading a manuscript before it is completed, I would qualify that as an alpha reader, and that's a whole different can of worms, if you'll pardon the expression there, the cliche. But essentially, a beta reader should not see your manuscript until you've written the end, in that order, at the end of your manuscript. And then you can feel free to pass it on. Now, if your question is, should I show them an unpublished first draft, I would also say no. My beta readers get the closest thing to what my publisher sees, and I don't send it off to my publisher until it's as close to perfect as possible, at least as close as I can get it to perfect, if that makes sense, because I know that there are still other things that my beta readers are going to see. And so what they get is, go ahead, Pops.
I think you said unpublished first draft. I think you mean unedited first draft?
Thank you. That would probably be more appropriate. An unedited first draft. Do not give your beta readers an unedited draft. They are not editors. They're not paid to be editors. They're not looking for comma errors. If the grammar and spelling are atrocious, they're not going to be able to focus on what you want them to focus on. So give them a very, very polished draft, and that's what they should be seeing. Secondly, you want to make sure that you're properly orienting your reader, and what I mean by that is you want to share with them the vision. We talked last week about the importance of your beta readers sharing your vision for the project, and I shared a little bit about my experience with Molly Jo and looking at NOLA without sharing her vision, and some of the snafus that came from that.
I would just like to say that Aaron is single-handedly responsible for half of the rewrites that I've gotten yelled at for starting over with. Just saying.
Pretty much every time you start rewriting, I yell at you, though, in all fairness.
I know, but at least 3 of the times was based on your advice. I'm just saying.
Okay, so again, another reason why you should not give your manuscript to a beta reader until you've written the end, because otherwise, endless rewrites. So, moving on. Take some time to share your vision with your beta readership. Let them know what it is that you want from this project. And the way that you do that is, I think, by being as specific as possible. So you might say something like, this is a story of a boy going fishing and what he learns along the way. You don't have to be 100% specific, but you should be pretty close. Really share with them your heart. Tell them why you wrote this and what aspects you want to highlight, and then I want you to be very specific after that. Okay, so the vision is not necessarily to the detail, but then I want you to give them things to look for that are to the detail. So you might ask questions like, I think my characterization of this secondary character is weak. How can I improve it? Or does this character seem too good to be true? Or is the romance working in a natural way, or does it seem forced? Or I'm shaky on some of my scenes. I know I need to cut some stuff. Can you just keep an eye out for scenes that you think can be cut that are not earning their place on the page? So really, by the time you finish a project, you can kind of put your finger on why it's not working, but it may seem a little unclear to you still because you're too close to the project. A fresh set of eyes can sometimes help that. So in short, you need to be intimately familiar with your project and your vision, and you need to have a good sense of what's working and what's not before you send it off to your beta readers. Otherwise, you're going to have people focusing on characters, you're going to have people focusing on scenes, you're going to have people focusing on plot, and you may not get that choir of voices that we talked about last week. For me, recently, I sent off a book to some beta readers, and my question was, at what point do I jump the shark? At what point does this become just absolutely ludicrous and become unbelievable? Thankfully, the response from the beta readers was, it doesn't. It holds true, and everything's fine. As the author, I was intimately worried that I was going too far in places, but that's not the way that it came across. So I was excited about that, but I was intimately familiar with my project, and I was able to say specifically what I wanted them to look for. Pops, you've got a different idea about alpha readers and beta readers.
I do. I'm going to be the cranky old man who yells at the writers to get off his lawn, and the readers, alpha and beta readers, to get off his lawn. Yeah, I am really on the other side of this. Perhaps it's because when I started writing, there were no such things as alpha readers and beta readers. There was the writer who would write, rewrite, edit, and send it off to the publisher, and the publisher then would take a whack at the thing. The editor doing the substantive edit and take a whack at the thing. Part of my problem is, and I guess the psychology of it is, I've been a loner all my life. So, having other people invited into the process never sits well with me. But I have some other logical reasons for this. But the first thing I want to say is, you have to find out what works for you. Because I don't like it doesn't mean it's wrong for everyone. It's not going to work for me. And I have some serious reservations about it. Beta readers, I'm okay with if you have some that you could trust, who know what they're doing. But I, for example, wouldn't agree with you about setting them up, telling them what your vision is. Your book should tell them what the vision is. They shouldn't have to hear it orally. I wouldn't give any more if I were to do that. I wouldn't give any more than what you'd find on the back cover copy, because that's all your reader's going to get. So instead of uploading the thinking of your alpha and beta readers, I think it would be, if you do this, it would be more efficient. If you don't, you let them discover it by reading it just like your readers will. I'm also pretty much dead set against, being a grumpy old man, against alpha readers. And as I envision alpha readers, first of all, this is the first place I've ever heard was on this show, alpha readers and beta readers. And I've been around a long time. But alpha readers is where you're sending stuff to them piecemeal, making changes and sending it back to them. So you're asking them to do the work 2, 3, 4 times, and then fine-tuning as you go along. I'm against that. To me, it's like a chef asking the customers to taste the food before it's cooked. No chef does that. They do their work, they do their art, and then they present it. And I think that's what we as writers should be doing. Doing the very best we can. Then if you do the beta readers, they may catch some things. I always have my wife read my work because my typos make sense and they don't belong. So I need another pair of eyes to help me distinguish between somebody who has internal injuries and someone who has eternal injuries, which are two very different things. So I always like to have my wife read through it, but that is pretty much it. A couple times I've had other people read, but it's always been just one other person. So I know it's the grumpy old man kind of syndrome, but my thinking is the writer has to grow, and the only way to grow is to do the work and then send it off instead of asking people who don't do the work to help you judge it. Now, some quality readers can be useful if you know they're great readers and they understand the genre. So, for example, in the CELA contest, which you won this year, the judges there are not writers or editors. They are experienced, you almost call them professional readers, in that they have read so much in a particular genre that the contest director knows that they understand that genre. They're not going to send a science fiction one to somebody who does contemporary women's issues. So she divides them up among those readers, and so it's a reader who's making those judgments, not someone with a professional axe to grind. Okay, so bottom line is this. My suggestion is to think twice before doing alpha readers, and then when you're done thinking about it twice, think about it a third time. And then it's up to you if you want to use beta readers. I don't think any less of anyone for doing that, but it's not going to work for everyone. So we're back to that, what I started with. You have to figure out what works best for you. Never follow another writer because they do it that way. You do it and whatever it takes to get done.
You know, in Pops, we actually had a bit of a conversation before the show because I think you might have been a little bit concerned that you were going to come across like a crotchety old man or just the fact that we would have dissenting opinions, and I like that. I like that we disagree on some points, and it reinforces your point of you have to do what works for you. But I did, before Molly gives her answer, I did want to jump in and say I used alpha readers, and I was in quotes because I think we're one of the few places, if any, that does actually use that term, very sparingly. As a matter of fact, I had 2 alpha readers, which I then cut down to 1, specifically for the Hand of Adonai series. And it's something that I did because it comes from the workshop model, which I had at Antioch, which a lot of major colleges and universities do, where you would share a portion of your work in progress, and every month you turn in another 20 pages and 6 people go over it, and that's kind of the workshop model, and so that's where you get some of these alpha readers. But once I was done with Antioch, I trimmed that number way back to 2, one of which did not attend Antioch, but he was a quality reader, and then I trimmed that down to 1, and actually now I use 0, mainly because I don't have time to wait for people. So if I send them 20 pages, I'm not going to wait for them to read my 20 pages and get back to me. I'm still writing. And so I think that a lot of beginning writers use alpha readers to try and hone their voice and figure out what their voice is. Once you're an experienced writer and you kind of know the ropes, I think alpha readers have much less to offer. And so that might be part of our discrepancy there, is the points of our careers that we find ourselves in, and that some of our listeners find themselves in. A lot of our listeners are unpublished or seeking publication. So that might be something to consider as well.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point, I think, when you're talking about why people use alpha readers. And I may get in trouble here, and people may mail me Rotten Tomatoes or something. But I think part of the problem is this desire to show before it's ready to show. This desire to get an opinion is an innate desire for someone to love what we've done. We want encouragement. We want some kind of proof that we're doing okay with it. And so we need someone to read it and say, oh, this is absolutely wonderful with that. And it's part of being a writer, especially writers of book-length work. It takes a long time, and you spend an awful lot of time alone. And there's really no one to come up and say, hey, you're doing a great job. You don't know if you've done a great job till you're done. And even then, there's going to be people who don't like it. So I think it would be important, if you want to use alpha readers, is to ask, why do you want to use alpha readers? Does the ego need to be stroked? And trust me, I understand that. You know, I'm emotionally needy on many things, and I love it when somebody passes a compliment my way. But I have to recognize that it's best for me not to show work until it is ready to be seen.
And I hate to delay you any further, Molly Jo, but a couple
No,
points I
that's
wanted to
fine.
make. F. Scott Fitzgerald is completely in your camp, Pops. He says, don't ever tell anybody what your work in progress is. Don't share it until it's published, kind of a thing. And so he's firmly in your camp. And I'll say, if we're just going to be completely honest and open here, that was a drive for me. The affirmation. I'm looking for affirmation, especially when I was in college, starting to get my, expressing my voice, trying to figure out what kind of a writer I was going to be. A lot of the work I sent to workshop groups were complete short stories. I wouldn't say any of them were good. I did get enough compliments to keep me going. I remember my first time at Antioch thinking they're going to be really impressed with what I have to offer. And then they read what I had to offer, and some were complimentary, and then I got their comments back on paper. It's a lot easier to write mean things on paper than it is to say it to somebody's face. And so I had all the mean comments were on paper, and all the nice stuff was the stuff that I heard in the workshop. And it took me a while, I think, to develop that confidence to be able to say, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I don't need an alpha reader to give me a thumbs up. It was nice when I needed it, but I think I'm not necessarily at that point. So that is a really good point. Why are you doing it? The fear for me is that if you're writing simply for the adulation and the praise and the all that kind of stuff, and you're getting that from your alpha readers, my question is, are you ever going to finish? Because if you're content to just have a small group of 6 people give you the thumbs up, at what point do you say, I need to finish this project? This needs to go out to the world. So if you're getting that ego boost simply from your writing group, you might not be writing for the proper reasons, if that makes sense. At some point, you're going to have to send your work out to a larger audience. I'm belaboring the point here. Molly Jo, how about you?
Well, I really don't want to say anything now.
That's what I was afraid of.
No, I first of all, Al, you're not old, you're just crotchety, but we're used to that. So, I wanted to start in the show notes. I did put this, that first of all, I love that Aaron referenced jumping the shark, because that's just not a phrase you hear too many people say these days anymore, but that really accomplishes it. And if you know Happy Days, the TV show, then you know what it's about. I have been a beta reader a few times. I've also used alpha readers for NOLA, and I will admit, with this being my first novel, yes, part of it is because I want to know that I'm on the right track, I'm doing the right thing. But Aaron, you gave up being an alpha reader because I kept making so many changes, and I think that's one of the drawbacks of having an alpha reader, because you're going in making changes, and then I had to keep updating you. You'd come back with these comments of, I thought this or that, and I'm like, oh, no, I changed that 5 chapters ago. You just didn't keep up. So I do know the drawbacks of having an alpha reader, and so at this point in time I only have one. And it is because she is sort of my research tech person who lives in New Orleans and helps me get that accurate. But as far as the storyline goes, not so much. For beta readers, I would say, as a writer, I will expect my readers to have a grasp of the story I'm trying to tell. I like Aaron's idea of telling them a bit of the plot ahead of time, and I think going in blind is not always the best way to approach being a beta reader. And this is where we have a note from Pops, who says he disagrees with this. Insert sad face here. Let's see your sad face, Al. Okay.
That's the best I can do.
All right. I do tell my readers, will tell my readers, the alpha readers, when they're beta readers, maybe not so much after this podcast, but my plan was to tell my readers that the scenes I'm not happy with or had difficulty writing, and ask for suggestions. Overall, I asked that they would read with an open mind, and in the end just give me their honest thoughts. Do they like it or not? What works? What doesn't? What did they like the most? What did they hate the most? That feedback gives me the opportunity to strengthen the story where it needs it, and lets them know where I'm struggling and what they have to pay more attention to. So I would let them know ahead of time what I'm looking for.
Excellent. So, in short, Patty, we don't know. We have no idea.
That's the longest in short I think we've ever had.
Yeah, it's You broke us. You destroyed the podcast with your question. This is going to be our last cast, so thanks all for the fun
I will
times.
hit,
No, I'm joking.
I will hit him, Patty. I will hit him on your behalf, and we will keep the podcast going.
But you can see there's a wide variety of ways to look at these, and Patty had actually mentioned that she'd had one experience that wasn't so great as being a beta reader, and so again, it's one of those things. It's a risk that you're going to take. There are a wide variety of ways to approach it. Knowing what works for you is going to be, and I think also you'll find that your beta readers are going to be the same people you go back to. That already know you and are familiar with you and your voice and your vision. So you can just hand them a book and say, what do you think? My beta readers are at that point. I trust them now. I can just, the last book I gave them, I said, it's a romance, so it's different. And they said, okay. And that was all they needed. And they were able to give me some really good, solid feedback, a variety of feedback. So there's that. Anyhow, let's move on to our main topic because we are already rapidly running out of time, partially because we got a little bit of a slow start. But I want to be respectful of your time, so we'll kind of get into this. Speaking of getting into things, our topic today is getting in the zone and staying in the zone. So you get into the topic and get in the zone. All right, enough of that. Now, what we mean by that, and I know it sounds like an AutoZone commercial, but that's not what we're going for. We batted around some different ideas for a wild card, and this is kind of what we came up with. And I believe that if you watch any professional sports, you've probably heard the term being in the zone. It's when Michael Jordan can't miss a shot. It's when you're batting 500 or whatever the case is. You're just on a hot streak. And as writers, the way that works out, I know you're writers, so sports are things that people play outside, usually in the daylight. Other people watch them play. Anyhow, I was joking like nobody knows sports because we're writers. The joke didn't land. Moving on. As writers, I believe that we've got a zone, we've got a sweet spot as well, and this is where you set a goal for yourself, 1,000 words a day, and by the end of every day for like a week, you're hitting 2,500 words, and you're just blowing your word count out of the water, and things are easy for you, and you know where you're going, you know how you want to get there, and the writing is crisp and smooth, and all of that kind of stuff. We all want to live there. If you've been writing long, you've probably been in the zone. There are probably days where you've been just king of the world, and then there are other days where you're like, you know what, I got a word and a half in today. I just couldn't manage to get that second half to get 2 words, but it can be a struggle, and I think more often than not, it's a struggle rather than when it comes easy. I think that the low times are much more common than the good times. But how do we fix that? How do we get ourselves in the zone? Well, I think one of the first things we want to do is look at possible reasons why you're currently not in the zone. And so again, as we mentioned earlier, do what works for you. What we're going to list here is we're going to take a look at what I do, Pops what you do, Molly what you do to kind of get in the zone and to stay in the zone. But I think there are some common reasons why people are not in the zone. At least for me, it's too much time away from your project. If you are working on something and then you take a week off, it's going to take you a long time to kind of get back into that project, get back into that world, rediscover your voice that you're using for that project. Maybe you have writer's block, you don't know where you're going or how you want to get there. It could be, and this is a big one, too much stress from the outside world. Too many distractions or interferences. Health reasons, could be family reasons, could be work reasons. I think work is a big one, especially if you've got that day job. Day job has been known to interfere with things. My day job really messes with my writing schedule from, I don't know, the beginning of August till the end of May. So maybe it's because I'm a teacher. But June and July are great writing months. They are awesome. I would say I was in the zone this entire summer. It felt so good. Did so much writing. Then the day job came back, and I'd spent some time out of my project, and all these things kind of rolled together to where I was out of the zone, and I'm trying to get back into the zone. So, did I miss any reasons why you may not be in the zone?
Well, I have one to add to that, and that is not focusing on the one thing. Writing is difficult enough that we as writers will seek other things to do. One of the first books I read on writing it's woefully out of date now, but it had to do with writing articles and the like. And the guy that did it, he has a whole chapter on how he procrastinates. His idea was, it's very difficult for me to get started. I don't like to start, so I think I'll oil the hinges on the door, maybe wash the dishes, give the dogs a bath. I don't even have a dog. I'll find a dog to bathe. Do anything rather than start. Now, what happens in our current situation is we have tons and tons of distractions that pull us away. And one of the biggest, and I'm going to get in trouble again with Molly, she's going to come hunting for me, is how much time writers spend on social media. I have seen writers who are trying
to... I quit. I'm done.
I've seen writers who, they're working on their first book, and I see how much they post on Facebook, and I'm thinking, if you had poured that amount of effort into your writing, you'd be another 2 chapters down the road. Now, I'm not against the social media. What I'm saying is that we as humans usually can only focus on one thing. There's this myth that we can multitask. It is a problem that I have had for a very long time. I usually have 2 projects going, and then I'm thinking about doing some other things, and maybe I'll do this, and then I'll do the research on that. And more I have to tell myself, focus on the one thing. Get it done. Then you can focus on thing 2. And maybe we could use Dean Koontz as an example again. Odd Thomas came to him while he was working on a different book. He stopped his work, he jotted down a few notes, he put the notes away, and he went back to the book he was working on until he was finished with it. He had that kind of discipline. He didn't let the thing derail him because it's a hot idea at the moment. He figured if it's a hot idea now, it'll be a hot idea 3 months from now when I'm done with this. So I think the thing that derails new writers most often is finding other things to do and putting their butt in the chair and doing the hard work of cranking out words. And there are times, and Aaron, I know you've done enough books now, or maybe you're feeling this. There are times when it's just tough. You just don't want to do it. Molly, in your books, I know there's just times you don't want to sit down and do it. And I am great at procrastinating. It's my superpower.
Nice.
It's not a useful superpower, but it is my superpower. I can procrastinate and rationalize. Those 2 things together are career killers. But there comes a time when you have to just focus on it. So when I had a day job, I had set times. I would sit down, and that's what I was going to do. And there wasn't anything else. Of course, you have family and stuff like that. I'm not saying you ignore them. What I'm saying is you find the time, and then you do it, and you stick to it. We get distracted too easily, mostly because we're creative people, so that's the drawback.
Yeah, too many shiny things, right? Like working, I mean, writing is hard work at times, like you say, Pops, and there are days where you're tired and you're worn out from your day job or whatever else the case may be. You got family issues going on. You don't want to sit down at your computer and write. You want to do something else. You want to forget about it. You want to watch TV. You want to play on your, what, Angry Birds or whatever it is. And by the way, I think more people should be playing Angry Birds Epic because I need some assistance from friends. But moving on. So then the question becomes, how do we get ourselves into the zone? And there are different strategies. For me, I'll list 3 real quickly here. And the first is what I like to call mind lightning because it's a really cool picture. It's really just brainstorming, but a fancier term. And what I do is I mind lightning. I do brainstorming about my project. I spend time with my characters, not physically because that would be weird, but mentally. I interview them. I ask them tough questions. I have them tell me a joke. I imagine different paths they may take to accomplish their goals. I ask what's going to make them uncomfortable, what's going to keep them moving forward. But I really want to spend as much time in their world as humanly possible. And the way I do this is by I make use of the downtime. So chores, doing dishes, vacuuming, folding laundry, while I'm commuting, when I used to commute back in the day, cleaning out the litter box. It doesn't matter what chores I'm doing. I'm going to take that time and go ahead and think about my project. If I'm listening to some music that I don't have that listed in the show notes, but maybe listen to some music that evokes a particular emotion that's going to get you in the mood for writing your book. Create a soundtrack for your book. But these are things that you can do rather than turning on a football game while you're folding laundry. And now I'm getting really personal because that's normally what I do. We're getting back to football season anyway. maybe you just fold laundry and think about your project. What's going to happen with that is you're going to have a much better idea of what you want to write when you finally get back to your project. So when you get back to your project, you're going to feel like you're more in the zone because you've already been writing in your mind. So making use of downtime and dead brain time to flip the switch on, get that brainstorming going. Another one, we're a very visual society. I say a picture is worth 1,000 daydreams. And so if I'm beginning to start a project or I've been out of a project for a while, I'll just go through and do Google searches for images for fantasy landscapes and architecture, this and that, or sci-fi, aliens or whatever it is that I'm writing about. I'm going to look at some of the artwork that's out there to kind of inspire my imagination a little bit. I've been known to save a few of those pictures. I don't publish them or anything like that, but just to kind of reference at times. I've got pictures for most of my characters in Hand of Adonai series and things like that, so I can kind of go back to it and be inspired again by the images that I see there. And I would say that for me the best one is revisiting old work. If I've been out of my project for a while, and this has been the case several times, I started, especially with the Hand of Adonai series, I write book 1, then I wrote another book, then I wrote book 2, and I started book 3. I got sidetracked on another project that I had to finish. So I finished that, came back to book 3, wrote another couple of days on that, had another project come in that I had to finish. So I kept having to put, book 3 off, book 4 off, and all these other things kept popping up. So what I've started doing is just listening. I'll encode it to MP3, and on my long commutes, I'll listen to it. And so it's this soulless robotic voice read my work to me, but it puts me back in the world. If I'm at my computer, I'll read through it, or maybe even do the text-to-speech on my computer, or whatever the case, or maybe both. But going a few scenes back, it kind of helps me build that momentum, helps me remember where I am, helps me jump back into the stream of things, the flow, the current, whatever it is that's running, helps me get back in there so I can pick up where I left off. So when I'm out of the zone, those are a couple of the things that I do to try and get back into the zone. I will give you a disclaimer, though. The picture thing can be a bit of a time sink, and it's like, should I write or should I look at more pictures? Ooh. So that can be a bit of a time sink if you're not careful. One thing that you can do is just say, I need these particular photos. I need a photo of what my main characters look like. So I'm going to grab 3 or 4 of those, and then I'm moving on. That way they can still inspire, but you're also not spending too much time on one particular thing. How about you, Pops? How do you get in the zone?
Well, I'll give a bullet list here. First of all, I'm tempted to say caffeine. Lots and lots and lots of caffeine. That, however, wouldn't be completely true. So I'll give you a quick bullet list, but I just want to add one thing to your mind-lightening comment. Experienced writers have learned that they're always writing, no matter what they're doing. They're always writing, and it's the subconscious will continue to work on things even when you step away. Sometimes what the subconscious needs is for you to step away, change locations, that sort of thing. But let the subconscious do its work. When it's done, that's what Stephen King calls the boys in the basement. When it's done, it will let you know. So you have to stay open to the idea that an idea may come to you out of nowhere, what it's coming to you from your own subconscious. All right, quick bullet list. I remind myself that what I feel at the moment doesn't matter. It's what I do at the moment. So whether or not I feel like writing is it's just not germane. It doesn't apply. If I need to write, then that's what I'm going to do. And I may not feel like it. I don't care. If you have to go into surgery and your doctor says, "Well, we're not going to do it today because I just don't feel like it," then you got a bad doctor. Sometimes you have to plow your way through on these things. And then what I found is when I do that, all of a sudden I enjoy it. So I used to tell people if I were talking to them about something important, counseling them on something, I would often say there comes a time in every person's life when they need to stop feeling and start doing. And that's the same thing for the writer. Feeling is secondary to the doing. Working writers who make part of all of their income from writing have to produce, whether they feel inspired or not, even if they'd rather be doing something else. they have to produce. And I'm not saying you have to write 10 hours a day. In fact, I would suggest you not write 10 hours a day. Hemingway once heard, I forget which other writer it was, wrote 8 hours a day, and he called him a liar. He said nobody can write that long. But you write consistently. I start writing, but I don't judge the material until I'm in the flow. So I know I'm going to write stuff that's at best mediocre. It's all right, I can fix that. That's what we call editing. I just start, and I can always throw away anything that's bad. It's warm-up exercise, if nothing else. Just start the writing. I set daily goals. How many pages do I have to write today, or how many words do I have to write today? And then I try to meet or surpass that. There are days when I can't do it. Things happen, but I try to be consistent in that. Now, I'm a visual modality. We all have modalities. That's the method of processing information. Visual people see pictures. If you're in school and you're taking notes, you probably drew pictures. There's audio modalities. Those are the people who pause a lot, go, that sort of thing. It's because words are very important to them. And then there's kinesthetic, that is, they learn through touch and by doing. I'm a very visual modality, so I do my best when I can picture a scene, and that's how I usually will start with a scene. I'll stop and see it in my head for a few moments, then the scene will begin to flow. I insert myself into it. And then lastly, on my little bullet list for this topic is there have been times when I've read a couple of pages from a capable writer and found inspiration. I just find somebody who does a good job, and I'll sit down and read a couple of pages, and that usually, serves as a pilot light for the fire that I need.
Well said. Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points, Pops. That I agree with. I really like the point about judging. Sometimes be enough to kind of get you going and get you in the mood and the mode of writing, picturing things in your mind. You mentioned taking notes, and if you're taking notes, maybe drawing. I remember in the psychology class, I would doodle. I was taking a psychology class in college, and all I did was doodle instead of taking notes. And then I would take the test and draw a blank, and so I would doodle on the page, and I would doodle the same thing. Then the memory would come back to me, and I'd answer the test. And my psychology teacher said, "I really love your doodles; they're so great to look at." And I thought, well, yeah, those are my notes. So, well, Calvin and Hobbes. Don't pay attention to Calvin, telling Hobbes what it's fine.
Okay, you're breaking up there a little bit, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and let Molly run with it?
Sure.
Okay. One of the big things that I do, and I know we've all talked about this, is that I actually talk to my characters as if they're in the room with me. I will speak out loud to them. And I know to non-writers, it probably sounds strange or even crazy, but one thing I've learned, especially in the last year of really powering down to get my book done, is embrace the crazy. I love being in the moment with my characters, and I ask them questions. General questions that have nothing to do with the book or the scene I'm trying to write. What did they have for dinner? Did they have a good day? What do they want to see happen in the story? I set dates to meet with them. Okay, it's 6 p.m. I have my laptop on my writing desk. Bring your coffee. Let's chat. And whether it's something to do with the scene or not the scene, I actually will speak out loud and then imagine what it is that they're saying to me, because each character has a different voice, and how they speak to me and the tone tells me if they're having a good day or a bad day or what's going on. I ask their opinion, and when I have writer's block, I yell at them. I know I've shared before a couple of times here that I was stuck on a scene for quite a while, like a couple of days. I finally got up and yelled at my computer. I just stood up and yelled, "What do you want from me?" I walked away, walked around the house twice, and when I came back, I had the answers in my head. Another time I was so frustrated, I just told my characters, you know what, I'm done with you. It's midnight. I'm going to bed. Talk to me in my sleep. And when I woke up, I had the full scene. So I really advocate going a little crazy.
You keep writing, you'll be crazy, so it doesn't...
Well, I thought being crazy would make me a better writer, so, I'm ready for that.
You got crazy one way or the other, so...
Okay, good. I also, music. I turn to music every chance I get. I have an iTunes playlist. I have several Pandora channels that I've created, and depending on the scene that I'm trying to work on, I will put on whatever works for the moment. I am currently hooked on Louis Armstrong, but more particularly Otis Redding. So as soon as Otis Redding comes on my iPod, the Pandora, or even if I'm lucky enough on the oldies radio station, that's it. I'm with my characters. I'm in New Orleans. I could care less if I'm at, well, obviously I care if I'm driving or at the day job or something, but it mentally takes me out of reality and puts me into my novel where I'm able to communicate with the characters. Also, I've noticed that my characters will show their personality through the songs and lyrics. If I can visualize my characters singing along, I know what kind of day they're having. If they want me to turn the song off, I know that maybe those lyrics are getting to them and I need to find out why. And then also rereading, Aaron talked about that. I read past chapters to refresh myself. Each time I do, I fall in love with my characters. I love it. It's revitalizing. But I will also, I'm a big TV buff, but I think those of you who know me know that about me. So I will put on a TV show or a DVD if it's set in New Orleans or if it's a mystery, and try to pick it apart, I guess, edit it, like this is, I did not see that one coming, and even if I'm already aware of it, I try to find the new clues that I didn't see the first 20 times that I watched it. So.
Thank you for that, Molly. I'm still getting some lag. I don't know if I'm lagging, if so I apologize. We'll try and get through this, and hopefully the quality's not terrible, and we can finish up strong. And next week I'll make sure that I'm not having latency issues and lag issues. But now we want to take a look at what happens when you are in the zone. So you've taken all these steps, you find yourself in the zone, you're getting all those pages done, and you are excited about it, and you don't want to stop writing. That's how I qualify the zone. If I don't want to stop writing, I feel like I'm in the zone. For me, management is the number one thing that I do, and that's just managing my schedule so that things do not interfere with my writing time. I protect it ruthlessly. I've got a pretty regimented schedule of my day job, what I do in the morning, in the afternoons, etc., to make sure that I'm able to, that I can write and that I can be productive in that writing. So manage that. For me, I've got to get the day job stuff out of the way so it's not pressing on the back of my mind. So I'm not writing thinking, oh, I should be doing this other thing. I can realize, you know, I've done what I need to do and I'm ahead of the game, and so now I can focus on this particular thing. So I manage my time. For me, I write early and write often, and what that means is I'll do my writing when I'm supposed to be doing my writing. The earlier I can get it done, the better, because when I get toward the end of the day, I'm worn out. I can't focus anymore. I know some writers who do it at night, and they just do better that way. More power to you. That is not who I am. I write incoherent things when I write at nighttime. So I do it in the morning. I'll go into work early and do it. Consistency. I just make sure I'm not taking days off. If I miss a day because of I don't get my writing time because something pops up during the day job, I'll bring my computer home and I'll do some writing at home. Just to make sure that I stay in the world and I stay in the voice and I'm putting more words on page. So the consistency is a big deal. Try not to take any days off. I hang on to the cliff, and so what I do is I'll leave myself at a point of conflict, kind of a little cliffhanger. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if you write to the end of the chapter and the chapter kind of closes and then it's like, okay, maybe I don't want to start the next one. Instead, if you start the next one or you leave off on a cliffhanger, you're excited to write that next part, right? You want to come back to it and finish up that next part. And so leaving yourself on the edge of a cliff, or rather leaving your characters on the edge of a cliff, can make you want to come back sooner so that you can rescue them or push them off, depending on the character. Maybe both. Maybe you want to push them off and rescue them at the same time. I don't know. So again, kind of on that note, I try not to stop in boring places. I've heard other writers say that they stop halfway through a sentence so they know exactly where they were going when they come back to it, so that they can finish that sentence and continue on. And that's their way of continuing momentum. I think that's great. But if you're kind of having a boring place in your novel, you're writing, say, an epic fantasy, and you kind of fall into Robert Jordan disease where you have 18 people walking across the country and talking and like nothing happening at all, maybe that's not the place you want to end. Maybe, blow something up. Maybe have your love interest find their true love in the arms of another person. Whatever it may be. Stop in a place that's exciting so that when you come back to it, you're wanting to come back to it. And I think that's important, to want to write when you're not writing. That way when you come back to it, you're going to hit your stride. I actively daydream. This kind of goes back to what I do to get myself into the zone, where I maximize my non-writing time by daydreaming. And so things that I can do on autopilot without paying attention, simple things like driving, juggling hatchets, open heart surgery, just stuff that I don't really need to focus on. I'll make sure that I'm daydreaming and within the world of my characters, and kind of some more of that mind-lightening feel. And then this is a new one that I've done. I started writing a science fiction novel this summer, and it's a project that I really want to get back to. I ended up writing the end of it, which I never do. I never write the end of a novel before I've finished it, with the exception of this sci-fi that I started, and also my novel that's releasing in October, Who is Harrison Sawyer? For whatever reason, that ending came to me halfway through the book, and I was able to write it and then work feverishly to get to that point in a believable way. And for me, it was a lot more exciting, and I remember hitting my stride book. I didn't really hit a lot of writer's block because I knew where I was going and how I wanted to get there, which is very, very strange for me as a discovery writer. But for me, again, it gave me, that carrot on the end of a string. I need that carrot. I need something to look forward to encourage myself to kind of stay in my project or get back to my project or remain firmly planted in my project. I need that carrot on a string. And so those are some of the things that I like to do. How about you, Pops?
Well, before I jump into it, I want to reiterate what I touched on earlier. A particular issue is once again, find out what works for you. No two writers are the same. And so it is a mistake to parrot what someone else does. You find out what works for you. If you like to write early in the morning, great. If you can't write early in the morning, maybe you like to write late at night. I don't really know what's going to work for you. There is no right way. All that matters is that you get through it, and you get to the end, and you get to do the editing, and that you're writing good stuff. That's what matters. Winston Churchill used to write standing up. So did Thomas Wolfe, famous writer Thomas Wolfe. J.K. Rowling found that she wrote better when she was sitting in the corner of a cafe with the baby in a stroller by her feet when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. I think of Woody Allen. He writes his screenplays at the edge of his bed. He puts the typewriter on the bed and still uses a typewriter, and he cranks out his story. Truman Capote could not write if he was not in his bed. He did a lot of his writing while in bed. He would just put it on his lap. So it varies. It doesn't really matter. And I wouldn't even psychoanalyze it. Why do I have to do it this way? If it works, run with it. So that'd be the first thing I'd have to say with that. Now, so discover what works for you. Listen to what others do, but don't feel like you have to mimic them, that you have to copy them in any way. Remember, the goal has always been and always will be to write a great book. No one's going to ask you, well, which writer did you mimic? Whose pattern did you follow? No one cares. What they care about is it a great book? So no one's going to ask you those other things. That being said, I stay in the zone by doing several things. Writing daily. Isaac Asimov used to complain to reporters when they'd ask him for interviews. Can we come over, because he didn't like to go out much, can we come over and interview? He goes, well, when would I write? Everything was filtered through that. He had to write. He kept 3 typewriters going. We've talked about this before. If he bogged down in one, he'd just turn his chair to the other typewriter and pick up on that book. But he had to write, and write a lot every day. So, you'd be jealous of that time. Write daily, whenever you can get it to work out. I know you have day jobs, been there. But, you work out something, it's the dues you pay, the price you pay. I like to insert myself into the story. Remember I mentioned I was a visual modality. I can see everything around me, and it has a rather emotional effect on me. My mind can't distinguish between the two sometimes. So I insert myself in the story. I try to be as sensory rich as possible, and then I'm not sitting at a keyboard writing. Someone once said to me, they said, "Al, I can't do what you do. I couldn't sit there all day at a keyboard." And I said, "I'm not there."
Right. Yeah.
You might see me there, but I'm not there. My mind is in the story, wherever that story might be. So I insert myself in the story, and that makes things so much better. Be sensory rich about it. I also practice what I call the constructive walk away. If it isn't working, I get up and pace. I love to pace. I do all my thinking on my feet. So I get up and I walk around. Or I'll walk away from it and do something else for a bit. Or I'll change locations, but get up and walk away, and sometimes that will change things. So if I bog down, I walk away from it for a while. The brain needs time to process ideas. This is not mechanics. Take this bolt out, put that bolt in. It doesn't work that way. The creative mind, needs time to percolate. So the percolating mind is what you're after, and sometimes that means stepping away. You're still writing if you're thinking about the project. So let the percolation continue. If I'm bogged down on a scene, I skip it. If the first 20 scenes work out fine, but 21 is giving me grief, I start 22. Or if I can't do that, but I know the climax, or I know what I want to happen at the end, then I write that story. I write that portion of the story. Sometimes what I find out is the scene that's giving me trouble is giving me trouble because it doesn't belong. I could handle the whole thing in 2 paragraphs in the previous chapter. So there may be a reason why you're bogging down on that. Just keep moving. No one's going to read your first draft. Unless you use alpha readers.
I was waiting for somebody to say that. I was biting my tongue.
No one's going to read your first draft. So if you got holes in it your first time through, doesn't matter. Angie Hunt writes from beginning to end as fast as she possibly can. And sometimes she'll just have a scene that has 2 lines in it. I need this to happen, and this argument needs to occur. I have no idea what that is. And then she moves on. When she's done, she's got 70% of a book. Then she goes back, and now she says, all right, now the real writing begins. That works for her. So sometimes the best solution to the problem is to skip it for a while. How about you, Molly?
First of all really great advice from both of you, truly. For me, staying in the zone, I will do the visual reminders. I keep frogs, fleur-de-lis wall art, photos of New Orleans on the computer wallpaper, and even in my living room, I have fleur-de-lis, I have paintings, whatever reminds me of New Orleans, and books, everything all over. So I just kind of keep myself surrounded with everything New Orleans. Accountability. I have a group on Facebook that I started as a way of sort of building the pre-marketing for NOLA, and yes, that's social media, but we're going to bypass that little aspect of it at this point in time. Honestly, in truth, it helps me to keep me motivated. If I don't post an update on my story for a few days, I get certain people that'll say, where's your accountability? How many words have you done? What's going on? And I appreciate that. That helps. The visual accountability, I put the 2 and 2 together again. I have coffee mugs especially. I collect mugs, and several friends have blessed me with mugs from New Orleans, Café Du Monde, and I will use them especially on the weekends when I'm sitting at my desk, and I will drink my coffee out of those cups. So that kind of helps me know, or it helps my brain get into that mode of staying accountable. I keep notes, I keep Post-its on my desk at the day job. As soon as I get a thought, I jot it down, just enough to remember what I'm thinking so that when I get home, I can pull the scraps of paper out and process them. Sometimes it's for a current scene or chapter, sometimes it's a reminder to check a character trait, sometimes a character's backstory that may never make it into the book, but it gives me insight into just how to present them to the reader. And then the last thing that I do is what you were talking about, Al, just do it. It's easy to get out of the writing habit, but it is, for me at least, easy to get back into it. I find as soon as I spend as little as 5 minutes with my characters, I love it. I'm with them again. I love their story, and I want to see it progress. So I'll talk to them. I'll read the last chapter. I do everything we've talked about here, and then I just write. And it's hard for me because I really love to perfect the scene before I move on. and I am learning that it doesn't have to be completely perfect. For me, it has to be kind of perfect. I cannot leave blank spaces and open and type in, fill this in later, but at least I know how to progress. So I will write it even if it's a cruddy scene and then move forward with that. As long as I do as much as I can to let my characters know that they are important enough for me to spend time with them. So, and that kind of fuels my imagination by committing to my characters and to the accountability of people around me. That's how I stay into the writing zone.
Did you say Cafe du Monde?
Excellent.
I did. I think that perhaps you and your wife sent me a coffee mug from Cafe du Monde recently.
Well, thanks, because now all I can think about is freshly made beignets and coffee.
That's pretty much all I think about all the time, so thanks for
Nighttime
that.
New Orleans.
Yep. As soon as my book is done, that's it. I'm having a launch party in New Orleans. Who wants to come?
Nolans.
All right, let's go.
They know how to eat.
Mm-hmm. And food is a big factor in my book, so side note on that.
Food should always be a big factor in anything.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Indeed. Time. So those are our strategies for getting in the zone and staying in the zone. Thanks for coming back for our second wild card in the month of August. Next month is September, which means a new theme, if you will. And this month, or this coming month, September, we're talking about.
Uh-oh. We're talking about what? We're talking about what?
All right. Good.
Try it again, Aaron.
Talking about. Okay. We're talking about dialogue next month, and
that's hilarious.
Keeping it real.
Sorry, we're talking about dialogue, and you can't get it out.
There's some irony in that, isn't there?
A little bit.
Frustrated. Frustration right now. All right. Well, we do thank you guys for joining us. You can always find us at altongansky.com, franklymydearmojo.com, and aarongansky.com. Don't forget to ask the author. Connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you all for joining us, and until next week, good writing.